Candidates across the country have been pulling out of hustings in order to, it seems like, avoid scrutiny. The latest candidate to do so was Labour's Praful Nagand, who is running to unseat Jeremy Corbyn in Islington North. Now, Jeremy has responded to the news with a statement. I'm dismayed that Islington North's healthcare hustings have been cancelled following Labour's refusal to participate. Hustings are crucial to local democracy and are an opportunity to engage with people we are meant to represent. Residents in Islington North deserve to know who their candidates are. They deserve to know what they are voting for, and they deserve to know their plans for the NHS. Over the weekend, I joined healthcare workers and campaigners at an emergency rally to defend our local health services. We believe in fully funded, fully public healthcare, and we will not allow private interests to carve up the NHS for profit. If other candidates do not agree, then they should at least give residents the respect they deserve by being transparent about their views and intentions. I am not afraid of questions. I am not afraid of discussion. I am not afraid of scrutiny. Why is the Labour candidate? I'm proud to have spent my life campaigning with my community for universal healthcare. This is what I will continue to do. It's no surprise that Nagand pulled out of the hustings since the topic of debate was around healthcare. Now, Nagand has multiple IVF clinics, so he profits off privatised healthcare. Now, a recent video surfaced where he said privatisation of healthcare is important. We covered it on our last show. And one of his clinics may have been selling useless and potentially harmful services to patients. But it isn't just this constituency. This is happening all over. Sinan, democratic accountability. I mean, that seems like a good idea, but apparently not a good thing according to MPs or prospective candidates.
No, they definitely don't like being held accountable. So there's kind of a couple of things happening here. One is the very specific thing in Islington North, where they have put up a candidate that is apparently unable to see the massive opportunity they have to be like the centrist hero for all time. Won't even face Jeremy Corbyn in a hustings, which I think is just reflective of how how poor the bench was for them for picking a candidate to run against him. Because either him or Paul Mason, right? Those were your two choices. There's another broader thing though, which is MPs have reacted very poorly in general to particularly social media, right? We've seen a lot of things come up in Parliament in the past two parliaments, really, where a big topic of conversation has been safety online. How do we stop abuse online? How do we stop this? And a lot of that does stem from this conflation of a certain type of person saying, you're awful at your job. And to be clear, most MPs are not very good at their job. They're not very good at the job of being an MP. And so someone telling them that feels a little bit like, maybe a little bit threatening to their security. Maybe not their actual security, but to their job security, certainly. And so you have got this tendency of just a rejection of popular participation. And especially if you look in the context of like the way the Labour right behaved from 2015 onwards, it is all this backlash. You have to understand it in the context of this broader backlash against public participation. That's really because they find it threatening. They do find it threatening when people actually participate because they are not good representatives. And you can see that in party manifestos, right? There's nothing between the Tories, between Reform, between Labour. There is nothing that people really actually want except for like a couple of crumbs across all of them. So yeah, I would be afraid too of democratic accountability if I was so out of step with British public opinion. That would worry me too.
Well, what we've seen in the last couple of years is essentially conflating abuse with accountability. And we've seen how thin-skinned some of our MPs are, particularly Labour MPs, where you say something on Twitter like, you're rubbish, you suck. And they're like, I've been dogpiled by some lefty and they're threatening my safety. Whilst at the same time, not saying anything about Diane Abbott or other people who actually receive abuse. Now, I'm not saying that these MPs who, cry wolf have never received abuse. They probably do, because some people, a lot of people are angry and some people do go a bit far. But generally, I mean, Twitter is great, right? It's the internet. It's a public forum. We can see what this so-called abuse is. And some of them have genuinely been, you're shit at your job. I mean, it definitely hurts their feelings, I guess. But Their job is to serve the public. That is actually part of the job. I know when people say like, well, celebrities, and they're like, oh, I felt a lot of abuse, or I've had a lot of abuse, and people say, well, that comes with fame. I would say, well, actually, just being famous doesn't mean it warrants criticism or attacks at least. But actually, being an MP, it is part of the job. You're there to represent the people, aren't you?
Yeah, it's this thing where they think the only reasonable way to engage democratically is the ballot box, right? They think, because you always hear this, like the only place where MPs should feel threatened is at the ballot box. But they also clearly don't feel threatened there either, because they're not changing any of their politics to match their constituents. I mean, if you take, for example, Gaza, right? Most of the British public throughout the entire thing wanted an immediate ceasefire. It took 8 months before major political parties even moved an inch on that, before they even moved slightly in the direction of where the center of British public opinion was. So they clearly don't feel threatened by the ballot box either, which might be why you see independent candidates pop up and just say, hey, these guys supported genocide in Gaza. That might be why this keeps happening to them, and might keep happening as well. You'll probably see more and more energized independents as time goes on, I would think.
Yeah, that's a good point you made. They're not even threatened by the ballot box, because I think in this particular election, because look, we have seen over the last couple of years MPs saying they don't, we're getting abuse, and that's to avoid scrutiny. But what Prattle was doing, the Labour candidate, putting out Hustings, he's not the only one. It is genuinely happening across the country. I've seen in the last couple of days at least 5, 6 examples where politicians are pulled out and the hustings have been cancelled. And that is because there is no threat at the ballot box, because Labour are on course to win a huge majority, and we know who's going to win. So that's actually probably partly fueling this, because they think, well, actually, I don't need to try and win your vote, because I'm in a safe red seat and we're going to win.
Yeah, like this is part of it, and this is why when you see electoral calculus, I think it was Birmingham Ladywood, they had this projection out with Labour won 79% there at the last election. There's no way anyone, now there's an independent there who's projected to get like 37, 38% of the vote, something in that region. And it's like, yeah, this is what happens. If it's the same thing that happened in Scotland, right? They keep asking the question, where are you going to go, to people? And my general answer to that is, it's never obvious until it is. Like, it didn't have to be the SNP in Scotland. Ended up being them, right? Doesn't have to be left-wing independence. It doesn't have to be, Galloway's outfit or Reform or whoever is thinking it, but it will be obvious as soon as it happens, because they're really tempting fate. I think they're tempting fate by not engaging in hustings generally, or just engaging at all. They just seem to have switched off and decided they can cruise. And hate to quote Rishi Sunak positively, but I do think the British people don't like being taken for granted. I do think that is something that can and will bite them in some surprising ways.
Everything here at Turn Left is still voluntary and work around our paid jobs. The goal is to have enough income to rent a studio and one day to start paying ourselves. Now, you can help us get there by supporting Turn Left on Patreon for £3 or £5 per month at patreon.com/Turn Left Media. Now, the channel has grown significantly with exclusive interviews, including Jeremy Corbyn and political party leaders. I want to see Turn Left continue to grow as an independent socialist media. Please give this video a like and share it widely. I'd also like to thank existing subscribers, members, and patrons. Thank you, and see you next time.